Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our May 19th board meeting. Good to have folks here. Thanks for your attendance and presence this evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we'll establish that we have a quorum beginning with a roll call vote. Joe?
Here.
Corby?
Here.
John?
Here.
Meredith? Here. Christopher?
Here.
Juan Carlos?
Here.
I'm here as well. We have a quorum. Corby, has this meeting been properly noticed?
It has.
Thank you. To help ensure that we're centering our board work around our shared values and serving our students, we begin each of our board meetings by reading our district's equity statement, framework, and the Ho-Chunk land acknowledgement, which can be found at the top of the agenda. Meredith, would you please read those aloud for us this evening?
Absolutely. Our equity statement reads, in the Verona Area School District, our mission is that each student will acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their personal goals, thrive in a diverse global society, and lead a healthy, self-fulfilling life. To meet this mission, the Verona Area School District will ensure that every individual has access to the educational, social, and emotional support they need to feel valued and affirmed in their unique identities and experiences. We acknowledge that inequities and power dynamics exist in our system such that some individuals, on the basis of their identities, face barriers to accessing the opportunities they need to experience success. In acknowledgement of such, the Verona Area School District is committed to disrupting these systems of inequity. And our Ho-Chunk land acknowledgement reads, there are currently 12 tribal nations who call Wisconsin home, with the Ho-Chunk Nation being the primary group living around Madison. No matter where you are in the state, you are on the ancestral land of the tribal nation. As we begin our meeting, we honor the land upon which we stand.
Thank you. Board members, I'd ask you to turn your attention to the remainder of tonight's agenda. I would accept a motion to approve the agenda if there are no amendments to be made this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Christopher. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda as written, please signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving on to student recognition. And this evening, Dr. Clarity, we are recognizing your advisory students. So I'm going to turn it over to you to give some celebrations and accolades.
Excellent. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. We are extremely excited to be able to bring two representatives from the student advisory here to just talk about the experiences of being advisory students, the significant progress and supports that they have provided in terms of leadership opportunity, elevating student agency, and be able to make sure that we are be able to bring thoughts to our community and to the Board of Education. So it is my honor to bring two of our students. We're going to have Faith and Aaron join us up here at the stage and there to do a quick discussion of the topics that we've covered this year and more. You can go up or down, or you want to stand? You want to stand?
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Faith, and I'm currently a junior here. I've been on this committee since 7th grade, and I've had nothing but positive experiences. In our superintendent meetings, we are provided a safe space to speak openly and honestly with our peers and staff to communicate what we believe is needed change or to keep things implemented in our school community. Not only is it impressive to see us peers standing up to lead, but I think it's also really impressive to see our superintendent, Dr. Clarity, create this safe space to talk deeply and listen to our ideas. And not only listen to them, but he also takes action. A big example of this is our mission statement. We worked to revise that to make sure every identity was affirmed and assured that this community was a safe space for them. Additionally, Dr. Clarity gives us his ideas and lets us critique them, so it's not just him making the ideas come to reality, but he's also getting a lot of our input to make sure that we are on the same page. I think that's impactful to see this because in this district, I think it's very honored that student voice is very important, and I think that's honestly the most important point, as these decisions are always affecting us mostly. And I want to take a moment to highlight again Dr. Clarity for taking his time out of his days to meet with not only his high school students, but also middle school and elementary schoolers. His efforts to acknowledge each and every one of us and affirm us and encourage us is something that I think is really impactful that's not credited enough. An example of this doing is in a meeting back in December, there was a controversy on how our principal handled acknowledging the shooting at Abundant Life. As the other students discussed with Dr. Clarity, how it upset us, believing that it was handled the wrong way. He chose to open up for discussion, and while that's a very uncomfortable and unusual conversation, he assured us that he will change the ways that things are brought up when tragic events happen or just any other forms of communication. And I think the biggest thing that happened that really made an impact was Dr. Clarity assuring me that if I say something to our principal and there's nothing that has changed, that he will take that step to make sure something happens. But yeah, I think that overall meeting with this group once a month is something that's very little, but goes a very long way. So I thank Dr. Clarity for meeting with us and taking his time.
Well, thank you, Faith.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Aaron Yarbrough, and I am also a junior here at Verona Area High School. I first started working on the superintendent's advisory council when I was in 7th grade. At this time, it was a cool opportunity for me to share my opinions, but I've been lucky enough to stay on the team for 4 or 5 years, and I've been able to see our ideas actually come into place. At the end of the day, students are at the center of our school district. They're the ones most directly impacted by the changes that are made regarding our education system and school policies. Because of this, it only makes sense for students to have a voice regarding these changes. Dr. Clarity acknowledged this right away through his creation of the student advisory councils, not just at the high school level, but the middle school and elementary levels as well. Being a student in the Verona area school district, it brings me great comfort knowing that there are kids who have a say in these policies that are affecting them every day. One thing that has changed in some of our superintendent meetings this year compared to the previous is that we've been given the opportunity as student leaders to select topics that we feel need to be discussed. Dr. Clarity has always been open to our topics, and the opportunity to deep dive into these specific topics using our own questions has allowed us to explore issues that we experience every day as students. I feel we've been able to create a nice balance between topics that Dr. Clarity feels needs to be discussed and ones we do as students. Getting to be a part of a team that helps make these decisions has allowed me to see how much goes into every decision that is made by the school district. When most kids hear about changes in our district, they often quickly form assumptions based on how they are impacted by these decisions. It can be easy to make assumptions about these things, but my work on the superintendent student advisory board has taught me that there is a ton of thought that goes into each and every decision that is made. Nothing is done without considering how students, teachers, and parents are going to be impacted. Every word that is sent out to students, whether that be through emails or announcements, has been specifically chosen to fill a specific purpose. These are things that many students are not aware of, but that I have been able to learn through my time working with Dr. Clarity. In short, my time on the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council has taught me that student voice is valued here at the Verona Area School District. I am grateful to have been given the opportunity to work alongside such great people, as well as to be able to use my voice to invoke change in our school policies. I look forward to continuing to work in our effort to make the school district the best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it definitely is my honor and very humbled to hear from our students. And they, like I said, they've been with me since the seventh grade when we came on board. And I'd like to thank the Board of Ed for allowing me to come in and put this concept of advisories into space for a student advisory, a staff advisory, and a parent advisory, which is a new concept here. Also, if you can see on the screen, acknowledge our 4 student leaders that all 4 have been on this journey with us for throughout the whole process, and really have, as Aaron stated, has been able to help us navigate and make shifts when needed. So acknowledging Aaron and Faith, who you just heard from, but also Michaela, who goes MJ, and also Sydney Moore. Both of them are hardworking and are all doing other jobs right now, so weren't able to be with us here today, but definitely wanted to send their thoughts. If you listen to the podcast this morning, we had Faith and MJ on this morning, so you'll be able to hear MJ's thoughts through the podcast that we just did this morning in the loop with the Sue. Again, it's definitely an honor to be able to work with our students as we continue to focus in on student agency. Some of the things that maybe not be thought of, even information that's going out. We utilize this advisory to read each line of the email often to make sure, like, tell me how this resonates with students, because I may not quite be student age anymore. So some of the language I may be using may become archaic or become too educational, too much of educational lingo. We want to make sure that it is sitting with our intended audience and making sure that there's no misrepresentation, and also ensuring that we are encompassing all perspectives as we put in communication out to our public. And they do a phenomenal job of providing that insight and feedback to me, often right on the spot in partnership with Marcy as well, to be able to look at our materials. I see some of the parents here with us today. Thank you so much for allowing the honor for them to be in the space with me. They give me a full hour or more a month, and that's just the meetings. And then I'll pull them to the side, and we'll have little side projects that we work on to make sure that we're doing things, because we know events in schools don't always follow a calendar, and I just need their perspectives and be able to get that insight as well. So thank you again for the honor of being able to lead with you. I get one more year with you next year, but we are creating a very solid pipeline. We have 60 plus students that are part of the student advisory now. I know we used to do the presentation here, so we'll be doing that in person next on the 28th or 29th. 29th, we'll be doing the medal presentation and also acknowledging our seniors. I did want to put our seniors on the screen. We have Jonah, Michaela, and Nori, who will be leaving a great legacy here as our senior team that same year, and they'll also receive the senior cords to wear at graduation. So if you see them, please acknowledge them. We thank them for their support as they head on to great careers post high school. But again, thank you both, Aaron and Faith, for so much that you bring here and giving us your time here on a Monday evening as well. I know it wasn't easy to come, so thank you so much. And any questions from our board?
I'd like to just share my similar accolades and gratitude to you all. Your feedback comes through Dr. Clarity and really informs us as well. We look forward to having students at meetings and to really knowing and understanding your experience, because a part of what our job is to really ensure that your journey through our schools matters and that you feel prepared to go beyond our VASD K-12 education. So your voice, even through Dr. Clarity, is super important to us as well. So thank you for your time and your commitment and your insights. And to just elevate again, as you shared, Dr. Clarity, just the importance of the time that you make to elevate voices from these different advisory groups has been really impactful, and the data that we can get through those voices I think is really important as a board member. So thank you both for your time tonight and in general.
I have a question for Dr. Claire. I'm just wondering if you could kind of elaborate a little on how students are chosen for the advisory.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when it first started, it became coming new to the district. I didn't know a lot of families, or didn't know a lot of students, and so I worked with our principals and really wanted to make sure that give me a broad range of perspectives, based off the relationships that you have already established with some of our students, both students that are highly involved and engaged, but also some students that may not be directly engaged and need that perspective as well, as far as how to do that. We wanted to make sure that it was also representative of our student body in terms of identity and representation. So from that aspect, that began the initial group, and then each year we've added, depending on core, it's 4th and 5th grade all the way through, but generally 6th grade all the way through. So I always have a new class coming through as we exit some seniors at the end of the day.
That's great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out something that Faith pointed out that may sound so small and simple, but I want to explain how globally the aha moment has happened for several districts I've visited across the world, when you pointed out the equity statement and that it had student voice to be revised. Sounds so simple, right? You would expect student voice to be in an equity statement of a school district, but everywhere I've been, when I've said that happened, that district was like, wow, why don't we do that? So I just want to point out the work that you've done is making an impact globally. Thank you.
Do you want to draw attention to just any of the other groups that we have to just
Absolutely.
list names?
And so this is, as we're listening, and I'm not going to read each name, as I just lost my footing. Thank you. So definitely want to recognize the other groups, not the other group, but the other members of our Verona Area High School team. We have our Badger Ridge and Court Knowledge team, as well as our Savannah Oaks Middle School team as well. And just, again, want to give a shout out to the leaders there who have helped me and always provided a great space. Then Mrs. Stanley, who helps me pull the students together, provides nourishment snack, and Dr. Hawkins, who has always, been there to support with agendas and making sure that things are coordinated as well. So it's definitely a team effort, and we get to engage with a phenomenal group each year.
Great. Thank you all again. We get to do a staff recognition this evening as well, celebrating our communications team, one of whom I see in front of us with Marcy, and I don't see Karen, but doing your communications thing. So as we step into recognizing the two of you, just sharing a bit, again, from my perspective as a board member, super appreciative of sharing dialogue communications that we get included in as board members that maybe aren't direct board purview, but also in shared communications, the ability to collaborate and have just the time and energy that you put into sharing information about the district on a regular basis. So gratitude from me and board members and Dr. Clarity.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else to add on our celebrating the communications team? I love that term, by the way. I don't think we say that often. All right.
All right, next on the superintendent's report, we have an update on SSM Health Dean Medical Group contract, and we'll bring Rochelle to the table.
Our
I'm going-
students, yeah.
I'm my students, and can you just meet me out in the hallway for a quick second, and I'll meet you right there.
Anyone's welcome to stay, of course, for duration of meeting or as much as you'd like. And yes, thank you again.
Thank you.
Hi, Rochelle. Do you need the clicker?
Thanks. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. This is kind of the culmination of the work that we've done to get us to the point where we're presenting to you tonight the contract to potentially sign with SSM Health for the onsite clinic. The last couple of meetings, we've met about the construction costs. And so we needed to finalize the construction costs before we actually entered into a contract with SSM. So Nate and Chad and I have been working with SSM to review a contract. What they presented with us is a 3-year contract that is not exclusive with our Dean Health Insurance Plan. So we can have 1 health insurance plan, 2 onsite clinic, both or separate. And this is really important depending on what we do for the future of the clinic and the future of healthcare. We have worked really hard on ensuring that it is a cost-effective clinic. We have built in with SSM Health a 5% increase to the cost of the clinic, which really aligns to what they're considering medical trend. We know, though, that 5% feels like a lot, and so what SSM has promised, and we've written into the contract, is that every year we will review the costs to make sure if they're coming in below 5%, we won't see a 5% increase. So that has been built into the contract as well. The rest of the contract is really the logistical and operational pieces of the puzzle. We really needed to document how we work through confidentiality, how we work through storage of records, how we work through terms and termination. Who takes care of the facility? Is that our custodians that come and clean? Do they bring in custodians? All of those really minute details to make sure we've got a clinic that operates well and runs well. We've also finalized what eligibility for our employees and our members looks like, as well as what we consider covered services. The other piece of the puzzle that I think is more important for the board and for our community is to really understand the metrics. So we've worked with SSM Health on what data we will receive on a monthly basis and a quarterly basis and an annual basis to make sure that it's being utilized in the right ways, and that we're really targeting all of the things that we wanted to discuss up until this point. So all of those pieces have been wrapped in the bundle of the language of the contract. What might be more interesting to think through is the details that we haven't shared much about to this point, and that's really the services that our members are going to see in the clinic. And so when we think about the clinic, we think and are expected that our staff are going to receive treatment for minor illnesses and injuries, our annual wellness exams and physicals, disease management, vaccines, and laboratory testing. Those are all pieces that we want staff to use the clinic for and their family members. Staffing has also been very important. Chad has shared before that we're paying the bill to hire the staff. And I want to be clear, SSM owns the staff. The contract states we pay a flat dollar amount to send to SSM and they pay their salaries. And within that, we want to talk about FTE or full-time equivalency of who are the staff that are going to be in the clinic. And so we've started with a base of 1.2 FTE advanced practice provider. That's about 48 hours a week that we're going to have an AAP in the clinic. There's going to be a 0.6 behavioral health provider, which is about 24 hours a week, a full-time medical assistant, and a full-time registered nurse. And those 4 people are really critical in running the clinic. There will be 3 medical rooms, there will be a behavioral health room, there will be a laboratory, and they're going to be working within all of those rooms to service our employees throughout the day. The other piece of the puzzle with this contract is who pays for what. And so we've been very clear on how that works. There are some pieces that the district is leasing through the contract, and there are some pieces that we're buying as a part of the construction. So we are leasing access to SSM using Epic systems. So SSM has to pay a premium to access Epic. We're paying that premium as a part of the contract. The same with the things that we have in the clinic beds, the computers, all of those pieces are built into our contract that we're paying a monthly premium for. And as those need to be replaced, it's just automatically built into the contract. So we don't have to worry about large investments once every 4 to 5 years or whatever that is. The other thing that I think is the most important is really the outcomes of this clinic. And we've talked about this a lot and how we tie those outcomes to the data that we will receive. So the biggest piece for our employees, and we align this to our strategic framework, is ensuring our employees are healthy and well. And we believe that with this clinic, we will have easier and quicker access to care. We believe that our employees are going to be healthier because they can see the doctor quicker than potentially what we see in the market. The other piece of the puzzle is really the savings. Every time the clinic is used is not an insurance claim to our insurance plan, and that's very important. When we talk about insurance renewals and insurance premiums, they always look at claims and utilization. So every time someone uses our clinic is one less claim that hits our plan. That is going to help us in the long term for negotiating premium renewals. It will take some time because we need people to build up to utilizing the clinic fully, but that's the goal at the end of the day. Every claim that hits the clinic is not a claim. We're also going to see some really quick savings, and our principals got very excited about this. New employee physicals. Typically, a new employee physical can take between 2 and 4 weeks between when we offer a job and a new employee to start. We'll be able to hopefully get them in the same day or the next day for physicals. And that's a cost that we're also saving as well. New employee physicals cost us in the budget. Now it just runs through the clinic. Same with workers' comp. That costs us money through workers' comp. If we run it through the clinic, those are premium savings through the clinic. So holistically, we've talked a little bit about the construction. We've talked about the location. Now we've talked about the contract. I'm going to open this up for all of you to ask questions. And then later on, we're going to have the board take a vote for approving the SSM contract.
I had a question. What does the utilization mean? Does it mean it's variable depending on how much it's utilized, like the lab consumables and the vaccines?
That's correct. So we're charged for any time that's used instead of just a flat rate because it's hard to identify how many people are getting lab work.
Is there like an average?
There is not.
There isn't.
No.
Can you remind me again what the staffing is?
Absolutely. It's
Not the cost, but what the FTEs are.
for sure 1.2 advanced practice provider, so APP, 0.6 behavioral health, a 1.0 medical assistant, and a 1.0 registered nurse. So that's a little under the rate at 3.8 FTE.
I'm smiling at you, Juan Carlos, because that utilization, and Rochelle probably knows this, that's the secret sauce to negotiations every
It's making
year.
it work.
If someone could figure that out or have a crystal ball, the negotiations would go a lot smoother.
I have a couple of questions. So one, will the clinic be open all year round? So when you talked about like some of the things of new staff, I'm envisioning summer, right? That this is going to be open always, not just following our academic calendar.
Correct. Monday through Friday,
7:30 to 6. Okay, great. Okay, so then I have a question about, so on slide 17, am I understanding this correctly that the on-site clinic is completely, really in theory, disconnected from who we have as district insurance?
That's correct.
Okay, so if that's true, can you explain to me how does the utilization discussion work with whomever the insurance carrier is, right? Like right now, I see those being more married together because of being SSM and Dean. But can you just talk about like that power to negotiate doesn't matter who we're with because of the clinic? Am I sort of asking a question, but I'm just curious about that because they feel so separate to me.
For sure, and they are separate. So Dean Health Insurance Plan, when they look at our renewals, They are looking at every claim that hits the insurance plan. So every doctor that submits a claim is what happens for negotiations. The clinic will never file a claim, period. And so when we look at negotiations, we're going to come with all of the clinic data that we have, and we're going to say, dear health insurance carrier, look at all of the savings that we've already had. Look at all of the things that we've prevented with preventative care. We're helping keep our plans healthier by doing this, and we should have lower claims, and so that's why we would have a smaller renewal potential.
Got it. And so that can be just discussed with any potential carrier to say, look at our data of our in-house utilization. That means less. Okay. That just helped me to hear it play out a little bit because I was mirroring those together a bit.
This is one where I feel like there's a lot of questions that I have.
Yeah.
It's a lot of trust. This is out of, my scope, they're just as far as like workman's comp. Does that actually, would a nurse practitioner be sufficient to manage workman's comp?
That is correct. So it's an AP.
Yeah.
Many people have APs as their healthcare providers.
Okay.
APs can treat workers' comp.
Okay, so that's not something that'll be a barrier. I feel like there's a lot of questions that will just kind of go on faith here a little bit. I mean, it seems like a great thing. I'm a little nervous just because it's a big expense annually. It's a new provider that we're kind of working with, but I'm just a little apprehensive.
So new. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I want to kind of add on to what Meredith said. I'm very in favor of this, but the savings at this point are theoretical, but the cost is very much real. And I'll just be honest, this cost is a lot higher than I was expecting it to be. And I'm looking at the breakdowns, and 2/3 of it is staffing and benefits. And the reason I asked for you to repeat what the FTEs are is I know what those jobs get paid, and it doesn't seem to add up to what's here. So I guess that leads to my question, which is, are we paying the actual costs, or are we paying them this amount, and if they hire staff for less than that, they get to keep the extra?
That's correct.
And on that 5% increase, I know it says in here that if actual market conditions reflect lower costs, that it'll adjust it. But that's unilateral, because we don't have the data to know what the market is. They have that, unless we have the right to like get their data and can audit it. We just have to go on faith that they'll voluntarily tell us they get to get less money next year. That I have some apprehension.
I think that's fair. It's something that we can go back to them as a part of the contract. I think the other piece that we don't want to miss out on is that the clinic has already been in Dane County and other schools, Sunbury, Middleton, and Verona, and it has been wildly successful there. In Wanakee, yeah.
Just a real quick question, sorry, around, this is a change for staff, so those changes sometimes can be hard. There's someone that you like and you don't want to leave them. Of course, that won't be necessarily an option with insurance plan change, but talk a little bit about the communication and incentivization to go to the clinic versus going to maybe a path that's well-worn that you're used to. I did that at a prior employer that had a similar plan, and it cost me dearly. And part of it was a lack of communication of what was the appropriate way to access the benefit.
For sure. I think we're a little bit blessed by having such a major provider disruption at this point, and that we're tying this together, that if this is something that's approved, we're able to communicate this sooner rather than later, and staff can start making relationships with these providers. The other thought that we had was having our newly hired providers actually go out to our buildings and meet with staff, have them a part of Welcome Back Week for staff. There's a couple other things. If we think about new employee physicals, every new employee is going to start building a relationship with that provider before they even start working at the district. And our annual wellness physicals, we're really going to promote that folks go here as well. So we've got a couple of different places that we're really pushing that folks give it a try. And hopefully with that, we'll start filling up the clinic and slots fairly quickly.
Thank you.
What would be the detriment to waiting a year to just kind of establish with Dean. Just, I think this is a shift for our community, and I think it's, to be positive, but I just want to make sure if asked about it, we have the answers. And this is one where I'm having some changes. What would you say like a year would do?
For sure. I think kind of just like what Christopher was talking about, building those relationships with providers.
Yeah.
You get a year into a provider, it's a lot harder to change a relationship. Dean is also building the clinic right here in Verona, and we would like to be ahead of that a little bit and start driving utilization right to that clinic and have it become more of a norm to come to our clinic rather than going to the clinic across the street. I think the other piece is really a cost savings. Our plan has a $20 copay when someone goes and sees a doctor. And with this clinic, it's cost neutral, it's $0. And that means a lot to many of our staff members who maybe have kids that go to the doctor more frequently or behavioral health needs, that quicker access. I really think doing it sooner keeps our employees healthier, and it really shows our investment in how much we care about them.
So just to confirm, if an employee goes and uses services at the on-site clinic, it's $0 to them
That's
for
correct.
non-preventative?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, all services are $0.
And if this gets really busy, and I guess how does it work if there's really long wait times for staff and families to get in, and maybe they need to get attention sooner, but because the on-site location is unavailable, they had to go to somewhere else? Is there any carryover? I'm assuming no, but I'm saying is if that situation happens, that they'll have to go to the Dean clinic or another provider.
That's right. The difference is they pay a $20 copay at the Dean clinic. And the other thing that I think is going to be important for us is to monitor those metrics. So we are starting with a smaller group of folks that are eligible for this, knowing that we want to fill that up. If we see that we're not filling up those spaces, then we can open it up a little bit more. And vice versa, we're putting it in a building and there's extra space on where we're building it out. And in years, if we have to add more offices, we have the ability to expand.
Are we going to be doing any data collection within the clinic to understand, because if it's not getting billed out, I'm wondering how much we're tracking just to understand what services are being utilized there at what levels?
Yes, we get all of that data.
Because I imagine there may be some ability, if the goal is to try and prevent claims from hitting our insurance carrier, the motivation seems to be to get the highest level of acuity service that can be provided at that clinic. And at the lower acuity stuff, if you're full, that's cheaper to be submitted to insurance.
That's right. And it's twofold on data. The clinic data is important, but also our employee absences and absenteeism and the amount of time our employees are taking off to attend to medical appointments is also data that we're going to be collecting and running concurrently to make sure that we're addressing a holistic need.
Do employees of the district receive a wellness incentive?
They do.
They do, okay, and then they can do the biometric screening at the, okay.
That's right.
So when you said we're giving kind of this chunk to SSM to do the hiring, that they're not our employees, we don't hire them, and what sort of feedback loop is there because they're here, in service of our staff in terms of conversations about who those staff are and feedback, evaluation, like just all of that?
So SSM has shared, and we've seen it with our other clinics, that there's going to be a very tight relationship with the clinic providers, and either me or Sydney Peach, our wellness coordinator, we haven't figured that out. They also would like our feedback in the hiring process. So we get to have a voice in the hiring process, and then we're going to be building quick relationships with them so that we're in constant contact.
To Joe's point, I was thinking, is this kind of a non-starter if you were to cap, say they hired a behavioral health professional at $50,000 a year, and this is baked in for us to pay them $75,000. Would it be an issue to say, if you're able to hire someone at a lower cost and have committed to pay you above this percentage or dollar amount, we would realize the savings?
It's definitely a follow-up that we will have with them tomorrow morning, because I think that's an important.
I mean, I negotiate contracts like this a lot, and often what it says is actual staffing costs for salaries and benefits not to exceed this amount. And, you know, we can try and push back and see if they'll say, if they actually think that's what it's gonna cost them, then we won't have any problem.
Because any savings from that could be used to potentially, set aside for expansion if this is widely successful and a lot of people use the on-site clinic.
I think when it comes to the contract, the thing, like, I don't feel great about this, but the thing that makes me feel better is there's a 90-day no-cost termination. So if we get to a point that we do this for a year, we realize the savings we are getting is not anywhere close to the expense, we can get out.
So even though we're going in, this is a 3-year contract, that clause is in existence, okay? That's the part I'm kind of, right, we have the contract in front of us. I don't have the legalese, I don't have the frame to really read and understand. And so that's always hard, admittedly, as a board member it's all in front of me and
Right.
what questions to ask, what pieces I do admittedly kind of struggle with that. I appreciate the summary you've given us and I'm just trying to figure out what am I not asking again, just because I feel that trepidation, I don't know why. And obviously we've been in favor of this, we've done the steps to get here, which you reiterated. I think another piece, if asked, can you just talk more about like that dollar amount that sits there, that 650,000? How does that situate with us just budgetarily?
So if we go back to when we signed with Dean, we actually had a fairly large budgetary savings from that health insurance plan. This eats into it, but it still is holistically less than the contract renewal we would have had with the GHC.
Okay, that helps me just understand the pots and the moving of the money piece, because, right, I see that dollar amount and I would be thinking, oh, and now we're just coming up with $1,000 out of our operating budget or whatever. That helps immensely to understand that change as well.
Was it a 1.7 million increase?
Oh,
We're
gosh,
way off. If we would have stuck with the
that's correct.
June season.
Yeah.
So we're still realizing about $1 million cost.
Yeah, and if you go back to any of our more recent budget presentations by Chad, this was actually built in a little bit. So we don't have to do another budget amendment. This was already built in.
Well, I appreciate you thinking out of the box for the benefit of our staff. So, and I also appreciate you giving time for us to kind of catch up to the innovations that we're so excited you're innovating. Hold on, wait a minute. So, this is new and I think it has the potential to be very exciting. So, it's just, again, all of these unknown, it feels like a lot of unknowns in the school realm. And now this, feels like a whole different sphere of knowledge, so. But I do see, the benefit to our staff, and then ultimately to us as a district, so it's just a big number to kind of wrap our heads around, I think.
So this is not an area that I live in normally, so I'm just wanting to understand, again, I think I've said this before, so the way that I'm thinking about this is, we're gonna build this thing, we're gonna pay for the staffing at it, we're gonna pay this, $650,000. And then after a year, whatever, when we come up for an adjustment, that's already set in the contract though. We have a 3-year.
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed. But they can come to us and say, this is what it is. And we should be able to look at, we know our clinic's utilization rate, and we should be able to see our claims rate on them. So we should be able to see if our claims went down by $650,000, then this was worthwhile. But now if our premiums don't go down by that, they're capturing more of the benefit, right?
Potentially, and that goes back to Corby's, what is the secret calculation behind the scenes?
Right.
You can't always see in the future with preemie babies or cancer diagnosis or a new and upcoming
Right.
biomedical, prescription. And so it's hard to future date it because we don't know the medical conditions that are going to hit our claims. So we can't say our rates are going to be $650,000 lower because we don't know what medical conditions might hit us in the next 12 months.
But every year, we'll be able to look back and say, you know, we had this much less in claims go through and this much utilization. So like theoretically, if we were negotiating a contract in like an actual fair market, we'd be able to say, well, we're gonna tie our renewal rates to the utilization of this clinic as well. We get prorated, but that's not how this industry works, obviously. I like this. I can see the value in it. It just never ceases to amaze me, like how much insurance companies have you by the short hairs. So.
One question around, I experienced the cost savings as a user of a similar system, so I get that. But I just, what have you heard from VAE in regards to questions, concerns, or support?
Yeah, full support
Okay.
along the way. You know, we started having some conversations with VAEA and VESPA just with handbook updates. And one primary question from VESPA was, how many people can access the clinic? A lot of support with this for a variety of reasons.
Okay.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. All right, do you want to keep perseverating, because we do have the vote officially on coming up. I understand all of our lingering sentiments as we move into this. We will move through our agenda to public comment. I do have one in-person comment tonight, Micaiah Price. You want to come up and share? Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Hi.
So I'm starting with a positive first before I go into the negative. First, I just want to say I appreciate Verona School District. My kid's been in this district for 3 years, and they have done a lot of growing academically. I have met some positive principals and staff that has been genuinely authentic and has went above and beyond to make sure all my kids are thriving and succeeding. Big shout out to Stoneberry and Sugar Creek principal. I mean, I also met Sugar Creek, by the way. To serve such a big school and to personally call a parent to say, hey, your kid is doing so good. That means a lot as a mom, especially working in education. To pour in so much in education to other kids to make sure that they thrive and to help them navigate the systems to make sure they don't get lost. I think that's why I'm here tonight. It's for your kid to get caught in the system when you pour in so many other kids. When we talk about partnership between schools and families, the family has to buy in. I was bought in with Verona School District. I trusted this district. Also, I do got a potty mouth, so I could be very intimidating when I'm advocating for my kid, but I notice I only get frustrated when I'm not getting that partnership. I come in nice, I come to parent meetings, I come to boringness, not identifying my kids' cultural concerts and sit there to support my kids. I even call, if I hear things, ear hustling on my kids, a potential could be a fight in you guys' breakfast room, that partnership, even breaking my kids' trust, hey, watch your lunchroom, potential be a fight. The piece for me is my kid missed 100 days of school. I've been in parent-teacher conference meetings, I show up, I drop back, and not to even be, even hold me accountable as a parent, give me a truancy. I should be called in for truancy, right, at some point, just to find out that they didn't have the right apartment number. I'm human, I'm a mom, I'm in school, I work 2 jobs, and again, I do so much, in this community that I shouldn't feel that partnership. And at first I was gonna wait, and I'm still gonna wait, to get to the right people, to get, how do we make sure that this is for all families, especially a lot of families don't know how to communicate with their kids. But I mean, the harm though, how harmful is that? To be in a district where a kid is missed and not been called, or to say, oh, I was waiting on you should know Power School, or you should have got a letter. We are human, we're not a call. People make time for what they want, like y'all making time for this hour, insurance fee that y'all wanna see. Like, people is dedicated and make time for what they want. So, I hope moving forward, when we talk about policies and board members, that we are making sure we're talking about all families and what does that look, feel like, because my kids deserve to be here too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Lori, any other comments this evening that I may have missed? Okay, thank you. All right, moving then to board action. So we do officially have the vote then on the SSM Dean Medical Group contract. Any further discussion, wonderings? So we have the full contract presented, we have the information, so the vote would be to approve the contract then as presented.
I really liked Joe's comment about the not to exceed clause when it comes to staffing benefits, actual and not to exceed.
I second that.
And I'm trying to remind myself too, with my uncertainties of just doing something so new, of really hopefully trying to anticipate the staff experience with this. That if this can really be a game changer for our staff, that's the piece I'm staying most hopeful about. And that, I guess that risk feels appropriate if that's really kind of what's being elevated behind this.
And also the fact that it's been very successful in other districts.
Right, we're not chartering unknown waters
Right.
entirely.
Yeah.
New for us, but not yet.
I would say just the communication is going to be highly important around how we engage. This is a new cultural experience
Yeah.
that we're putting into our community. And so there's going to be some changes, and I just see what you're thinking about first.
And I know Rochelle talked when we did have the discussion, not to put words in your mouth, but I remember when we talked about just changing insurance carriers, about like the insurance roadshow and making sure, right, that staff feel that direct insight into what these changes are, and hopefully no one understand what this would mean.
One of the concerns that I would have, just, and I know, again, we do a great job in communicating with our community, our taxpayers understand this is not an additional draw on them. This is ultimately in service of a lower premium than negotiated. So I think there's going to need to be just good communication with our community and our taxpayers to recognize. I think that's, healthcare and insurance costs are tricky.
And I think just for folks to know and understand, being an educator makes access to healthcare challenging, right? For the most part, the school day is a really tough position to be in because you're either out of your role and away from your students, needing to try to find sub-coverage, the cost to a district with that. I think the layers and complexities of being in education, that part I'm feeling very hopeful that we improve ways for our folks to access easily from the proximity of a workspace, right? Because I just, having lived that life, that's really a challenging spot to be in when you're in education. So I'm hopeful about that as well for people. Is anyone ready to make a motion to approve the contract as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. And there's certainly a space for more discussion. With the,
Yeah.
would that be an amendment? How would we phrase that language, Joe, to just acknowledge what you shared about the not to exceed?
Yeah, I guess it would just be, I don't know, is it a conditional approval on acceptance? Like, does this mean if they don't agree to that language, they have to bring it back to us?
Yes.
Is that what's being discussed?
That's what that would mean.
I think I wouldn't make it necessarily a conditional approval so much so as a strongly requested term. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a procedural question for the board. Like, are we actually voting on something, or are we saying we want this?
Right, I think there's a sentiment piece there. What do we want? Do we want that to be conditional or or taking the pause, because that was a piece, yeah, thank you.
Are we saying this is something that we would like to have introduced or that we require to be introduced? Which one are we as a board saying?
I know, I'm looking at Corby and Joe, and we're just like, your insights and, yeah, being in this world a little bit.
I see Nate's coming, but
Okay,
my,
thank you.
let's see what he says, 'cause I have my thoughts.
You have to do like permission to approach? Just kidding. Just kidding.
So you guys can vote to approve the contract as presented. You can vote to approve the contract as presented, but direct administration to pursue that additional clause as well. Or you can vote to table this and come back.
Which was gonna be something I was wondering just with anyone's, yeah, John.
I just was, talking over here and,
Timeline.
Right, that's,
yeah, I
yeah.
would be curious about the timeline. I would also suggest that approving it with a suggestion that we want to go back in a public setting.
I know, that's what I'm
Really
saying.
like, I know, I personally am inclined to say, no, I'm not comfortable until I get this, language in there, but I'm also curious. about where- Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense, John.
Is it more of an affirmation that that is the understanding of the contract language versus art, like, it's not clear and how it's currently written? I mean,
I don't know, I think it's pretty clear. It's clearly written as a fixed cost. When they haven't hired the people in the position yet, so. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe they pay their people a lot more than.
Can you explain your nodding? I just because again, this is helping me kind of,
Yes.
not to put you on the spot, but I just see you nodding, so like.
What Joe, I think, is getting at is what John just got at, unfortunately, that we want to address that fixed cost before we approve the contract.
Okay. So then is there a motion language that someone,
But what's not that easy?
what?
okay,
It's not as simple as just tabling this right now.
Oh, tell us more.
Should have never went and said that. So I'd like to put in just a piece about the timeline if we table it and then bring it back. So every day or every week or every 2 weeks that we pause on signing this contract is 2 more weeks that we have to push out the clinic. And our goal was to have it live in August or September or even early October, so that we could ensure that staff start seeing them right away at the beginning of the school year, which coincides to our wellness, voluntary wellness program. Physicals are due by November 15th. And we can't move forward with posting and hiring or the build out for Epic or any of those pieces until this contract is signed. And the biggest part is actually Epic. The Epic build out takes the longest amount of time out of all of this. And so if we think about pushing the contract out, we also know we're pushing out the opening of the clinic by weeks, potentially.
Is that what they're saying, that they needed 3.5 months build-up process?
That's correct. The Epic hookup, oddly enough, takes a very long time.
Do we have any ability to like look at what their actual costs are? Like, you know, when I want to come back to this in a year or 2 or 3 years to evaluate, like, was this a good deal? Is it an effective thing for our district? You know, by and large, I think I can get most of the numbers that will help me make that decision. But like, one of them would be like, okay, if we're agreeing to this as a fixed cost, you know, do we have the right to look at data, like how much that actually costs you? Like, is there profit margin in addition to the $150,000 administrative cost that's there, that's also for them?
Yeah, there's language in the contract for us to get a report for that.
Okay,
And so that could be something we come back at this time next year when we start getting the data and look at utilization and salaries and benefits and the cost of the contract to determine then if we want to do the 90-day buyout in a year.
so I will say that this seems to me to be such a valuable improvement in supplying care for our staff and potentially limiting costs later, but it is still a gamble, that I'm comfortable with it. But I would expect, and this is the part that I'll say, I would expect that if we are entering in partnership with them both as an insurance provider, but now also as the healthcare provider for this clinic, that, you know, we're taking on all the costs to do this upfront with the hope that our premiums will be lesser down the line. And then it's entirely possible that they could say, well, your premiums could have been this unrealistic number, but you've saved all this money and it's actually just a realistic number. And that's just a game to be played. But I would expect that, like, you know, rephrasing that bit of language would be, you know, an act of good partnership on their part. But I understand the need not to hold it up at the board level, so I'm fine with it.
But it's a 3-year renewal or option to renewal, but annually there's a 90-day opt-out.
Anytime.
Anytime.
Anytime. It's a 3-year.
There's our safety. net.
Right,
Worry.
yeah.
Except that we're putting all the money into the construction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's-
I know.
It's a huge expense already there.
But then in theory, we could partner with someone else, right? We have the clinic, it's our clinic, we could, so it isn't necessary, it doesn't rely on this contract to have a clinic. This is our initial partnership.
But it would be 3 years, if that fixed cost becomes a sticking point, it's 3 years of that fixed cost.
It is, but we also built into the contract every year when we look at that 5%, that if it's not a cash cow for them. If we're running lower, our 5% should be reduced to 0% or 1%.
I appreciate the timeline, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, this is super helpful discussion. I know it's added time, but this is really beneficial. So we had a motion that got retracted.
Well, I would say, because I'm
Ish.
comfortable moving forward because of that timeline, but can we still ask if they would consider? Limit?
Yeah, I think that was where we were. It wasn't
And if they say
necessary.
yes, it's, we already approved it, it's amended, we got the 90 days to retract anyway.
Yeah.
No harm, no foul.
Yes.
So would you like to
That's that.
restate a motion then?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, how do I restate the motion?
exactly. Go for it.
Nope, okay.
Oh, you sure?
Yep.
Okay. And if you need input, we have help on how to phrase a motion with what we've talked about.
Yeah, so how do I phrase that?
Oh,
We approved with the, wanting to bring up for consideration that Dean amend the contract to reflect a seal, or Joe, how'd you put it?
Well, I think it's just that our preference would be that the staffing costs line item be listed as actual costs of salary and benefits, not to exceed whatever the amount that's in there is, 450 or whatever it was.
That.
472.
And I would second.
Okay, I think I took a note that sort of reflected that general language. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the contract with the amendment about the staff line item in particular. And there is a second from Christopher. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor of approving the motion to approve the site clinic contract as amended, signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, contract is approved. Let us know how that added piece goes. Thank you both for the
Thank you,
added
guys.
time. Yeah, this, again, new landscape for, I think, lots of us. Thank you. Okay, and where are we on the agenda? We're doing some results. R2.3, moving on to monitoring technologically fluent results. Board members, hopefully you had your kind of checklist. We'll debrief that then after we go through our monitoring and hearing from the team. Welcome, Jason. Hi, Amy. Results.
Sir, give a moment.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, why they, I mean, we still have a quorum. Okay, so we're gonna keep moving. I didn't call a pause. Okay.
Okay. Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. We're excited to share the good work of Jason and his team with R 2.3 in terms of technologically fluent and our goal for students in that regard. We're also excited because we've used this opportunity to try to take some of your feedback from previous board workshops about how we can restructure monitoring reports and our presentations to make sure that you'll notice in the monitoring report tonight, we have some slightly different formatting to call out and try to really highlight some of the areas that you've asked for in terms of summaries, leadership moves, as well as providing multiple sources of data. So you'll also likely notice in our presentation tonight, we have more data and more sources of evidence so that the board is able to make sense of what that data looks like. That being said, for the sake of time, we likely won't go through every single pie chart that you see in there, but at least you have access to that data should you choose to want to dive further into it or if you have questions about it. But just know if we're going through the slides at a more rapid pace, because we want to provide you with the wealth of data, but talk to some key highlights. And we'll be interested in your feedback in how this process worked or how we can continue to improve it, as well as your debrief of the content. So with that, we'll turn it over to Jason for our 2.3.
Thank you. So R 2.3, which is technologically fluent, when we're looking at R 2.3, all three indicators for R 2.3 demonstrate achieving reasonable progress with an increase in hotspots, an increase in student survey responses regarding access to digital learning opportunities, and then an overall alignment providing professional learning aligned to the DPI digital learning plan. With this, obviously up there, when it comes to technologically fluent, being able to not only literate and enumerate, but also, having our students and staff being able to achieve their goals surrounding technology. And up here at the interpretation, and I love this picture, and anytime I can include it, this was the first opportunity we had with hiring some of our high schoolers for our summer Chromebook rollout. And we're having the opportunity again this summer. We hired 3 for our Wi-Fi refresh that is starting in the next few weeks, so we're super excited about that. Some of the interpretation of terms, as you can see up there, and some other amazing pictures as well, doing some robotics. And as we get to indicator 1, increased availability of internet hotspots for families that do not have access to internet at home. As you can see, we have met that, and you can see right now we're at 43 total hotspots currently out to families. This is 16 more hotspots than last year. These are always out on a basis of need. So the process is actually they reach out to a school counselor or social worker, and they meet, and then the school social worker will actually fill out the form that then goes to my team, and then we get those set up and then sent out to the sites. Just a reminder though, when we made this, this is now year 3, this was, obviously right after COVID, making sure that we're providing those hotspots to students in need. Even though we're still going to be providing this, obviously our focus though, just with my last time I presented here, is really focusing on strengthening our fiber network here in a variety of ways, not just refreshing the network, but obviously with the Wi-Fi project, with our fiber project, which is actually on the way as well this summer. So a lot happening when it comes to wireless within our network. So, and when looking at indicator 2, as well, increasing percentage of students identifying access to digital opportunities as measured by the technology survey. So with this, we had students surveyed, and when we're looking at this, we had 42.14% of students say they had more opportunities than last year, and 49.7% of students said they had the same amount of opportunities. So when we're looking at that compared to last year, going from 31.5% who said they had more, and 62.3% who said they had the same. So I'm happy to see, that percentage saying that they have more opportunities, jumping up from that 31.5 to that 42.14%, which was really happy to see. And obviously there's a lot of things that my team does a lot of amazing things that the entire school district does as well when it comes to technology. And just when it comes to the pie charts, I tried to make last year slightly dimmer, so just a heads up. That's why it was a little bit dimmer when you're looking at those. But you can just see all the numbers there as well with all of these. And some of the things that we did for our students, obviously with the Chromebooks, which was huge, bringing those, we brought a paid typing program to our students in grades 2 through 8. And I'm happy to say it's definitely being utilized, especially at our middle school sites, at those morning advisory times. In total, we've had students use it for 259 total days allocated. So this is not, oh, they touched it for 259 days. That's 259 times 24 hours. So very happy to see that it's being used that much. And then another big thing too is, when it comes to getting the devices back in the hands of our students, we went from having iPads where, getting a headphone jack broken in there meant we sent it out. And on average, it was just over 16 and a half days before the student would get their actual device back, meaning they were with a loaner that was different, apps weren't all the same, to where now we do self-repair. And right now, we are getting a student their device back just under 1.5 days. Which we're very happy about. And that includes sometimes even having to send it to central office for a little bit of, I call it tier 2 supports from Darius Simmons, who does all those repairs down there. So, but like I said, we're gonna be continuing that for next year to make sure that not only are those opportunities there for students, but we're getting those devices back in our students' hands so that they have their device, not a spare one, for the least amount of time. And obviously, some of the other things, the robotics that are happening in our district, and then obviously the 3D modeling, just some of the things I touched upon. You go all throughout our elementary, middle school, high school sites. Those are just some of the things you'll see, but there's, amazing opportunities that are happening in all 3 levels throughout all of our sites. And then indicator 3, this is the only one that, just as a reminder, there is not an increase to it. This one is just establishing that there are digital learning opportunities. And we are looking at the DPI digital learning plan. And when it comes to these, we've always used the same 5 questions that we go and survey our staff and students with. And a couple of those I really want to highlight are actually the first 2, which is no matter what your role, do you feel you could teach our students about digital citizenship? When it comes to this is such a important thing, just because obviously our students have these digital tools all the time now. And at such an early age, we're seeing, cell phones in pockets, we're seeing cell phones on wrists, and, being able to just know, teaching them the right ways in order to use those and making sure that that not only it's not just their teachers, it's their librarians, their family, their friends. And that's why when we ask the students too about this question, who's talking to you about these things, we put multiple answer choices from there. And it was good to see that it's great to see that it was their teacher, but it's good to see that there was multiple people who were talking to them about these different things surrounding digital citizenship. But you can see obviously when it comes to the chart, when asked, it was almost identical to where we were last year, that 88.4% last year. Do you feel you could teach our students about digital citizenship? And then this year we had more responses, but it was at 87.2%. So nearly identical to where we were last year with that. And some of the resources, the 6 areas, I just wanted to make sure we put those up there. And then, like I said, when we asked students, as I said, they're saying their teachers, their parents, their principals. This is not something that's just one person. It really is that community effort that goes into this. And this is something that we plan on expanding next year, and it'll be something I talk about at the very end of the presentation. So, and then lastly, the next thing, something I'm really just proud about is the efforts that we made with some of our cybersecurity initiatives. Do you feel the information on cybersecurity and strategies shared with you have helped you secure your life both at and outside of school? this is something that, my job is not just protecting them here, but also trying to help them in ways that can protect outside of school. And last year, we were at 90.9%, which I was just floored with, like the fact that many staff felt. And now this year, 91.7%. So it still was increasing even from last year. And one thing that we wanted to make sure as well is, well, let's take big picture and let's look at the last 5 years. And when I started in the district in 22-23, we had an average fish rate, and you want to be lower, 15%. And you can see as we've gone through, that fish rate percentages went down. And I would say that actually with my co-pilot, Dan, who you got to meet with the fiber project, he's made them even harder. So we're making harder fish campaigns, but our numbers are still going down, which is really good to see. And we actually just recently had our lowest fish percentage at 5% with our most recent one.
I just pause, Jason, for a second. Just want to reiterate, because I get this question from our community as well, a lot about cybersecurity and things that we're reading across the nation in terms of cyber attacks and what the department has done in terms of the intentional training and methodologies that they go through to make sure each staff has a keen eye to these phishing traps that we all kind of get. I think we have gotten to sort of pride in ourselves of making sure that we can get to the team, recognize them, and put them out there. But when you see the data that supports each year, each of it going down, and then month by month this year, them going significantly down as well, I think that is something to be elevated as kind of a clear problem, root strategies through leadership, and then some of the outcomes. And just want a broader message to our community around, yes, this is in fact, these are the techniques that we're using to, there's no such thing as prevent, but just try to make sure that we are best positioned to not have a cyber attack. So I'll give a shout out to Jason and his team for that.
Thank you.
I just had a parallel question. I know there's another slide about the phishing campaigns, but how much of that extends to students? How much risk is there with student email accounts, and how much of, because I know the focus tends to be the staff conversations that we hear, but I'm just curious from that lens of, digital citizenship, risk,
With
et cetera.
student accounts, not as much. Just because with the actual information that's tied to those accounts, the information is, they're not getting information there. But there are going to be some things that we're doing next year that are going to, I think, educate our students more on those things and strengthen, just when it comes to the best thing you can do is strengthen your password, right? And the length of it. So we're going to be making some initiatives for next year along with that. But then, like I said, the other big thing is going to be surrounding even just some of the opportunities that they'll have surrounding that as well. But when it comes to the data that's tied to it, that's where, they might get access, but what are they getting access to? It's just not, there's just not as much stuff there, so. So some of the things as well, you can see, this is our newsletter that goes out every month. I always get a thank you about the jokes. I always thought they were corny, but a lot of people seem to like my jokes and my comics.
That's what I scroll to immediately.
There we go.
Every
There we
time.
go. Another big thing we did, we upgraded our endpoint detection to where we added all devices, so not just our Windows and our Windows and servers, but now our Macs had endpoint detection, but not to the extreme that our Windows and servers do. Now every single staff device has the top of the line that we could get when it came to Sentinel-1. And so very proud of that. And then another thing we started doing this year, we expanded our phishing campaigns with kind of gamifying it. So now staff, by clicking the little red fish to report it during the phishing campaigns, their name is automatically entered into a contest that then they have the opportunity to win prizes from Swedish Fish to, you can see right here, a fun sticker that me and Dan made with AI of it's a phishing sticker with us. It says, didn't get fished by Jason and Dan. That's been a hit. And then we even have shirts as well that the grand prize winner will get. So expanding that this year, and then we're going to actually have more opportunities with it next year. So it's been good just because a lot of times people get hit with phishing campaigns and they go, oh, another one. If you gamify it, it makes it a little bit exciting, and it actually
I get people telling me, they'll email me afterwards and go, I hit the red fish and it told me it was a phishing campaign. So they're getting excited, and, you know, it's good just because it's making them more aware. And I've had people tell me about these things that have happened in their personal lives as well, and how it's helped them catch things that were phishing attempts as well. So going through, when it comes to, you know, adequate technology professional development and seeing where those at, you know, obviously I have my charts, and everyone can see the charts here, but I'm going to just advance to the next slide just because it has kind of like that summary of all the charts. Actually, this one, when it came to the adequate amount of technology professional development, the amount of staff that agreed, obviously, you know, that had went up slightly, and then strongly agreed was right a little bit below. So kind of did right around that same amount as last year as well. You know, some of the things we've done with that, obviously we had our Chromebook PD. This was actually for staff and students. For staff, we had professional development at the end of last year, just to get them ready for it going into the summer, so that, you know, going in, they felt a little bit calmer just because it was a new device for students. And then at the beginning of the year, we had Chromebook training for staff again and our students as well, which was funny to see because when I was walking through hallways, students were like, I know you from somewhere. And it was the videos that I made in the beginning of the year surrounding Chromebooks. And that's a little GIF you could see at the top right that came from it. So we still do our monthly EdTech PD as well. And we had some virtual PD for staff surrounding Google Meet, which we had moved to this year as well, and some other opportunities. We had our summer lunch and learns as well this past summer, which was kind of a big hit for our 12-month staff, which is something we continued from the year previous. Feeling confident managing students when using technology. Once again, right around those same amounts as well. You know, when we're looking at overall strongly agree, it did slightly go down by that 3.3%, but when we're looking at this, they had a new student device. They also went with a new filtering and classroom device as well, you know, going from Apple Classroom to GoGuardian Classroom. And so kind of going through all those, I'm really hopeful that with next year, now that they're a little bit more used to the Chromebooks, used to GoGuardian Teacher, and those tools, that this will help with that for next year as well, and that comfortable, those numbers will go up a little bit more. And then lastly, being able to create my own personal goals surrounding technology. With this, once again, right around the same where they were that previous year with those numbers as well. You know, with this, you know, when we were looking at this, the difference between last year and this year, the difference was 0.01% overall. So very, very slight difference. We did do similar to last year. We had our Tech Bites and we had our swag bags, which actually, I haven't announced them yet, but I just did the wheel of names today to get some of our winners for those. And then we will be delivering those to the winners this week. And it's just something that we like to do to kind of, you know, have staff go talk about the ways that they've used some ed tech tools and that helped them, and then also give us some things that they'd like us to cover, you know, for next year and things to get ready for. So it's not only a way for us to learn more about what they want, but also just to kind of hear what they're using. And this year, not surprising, is AI and actually Canva. Canva always seems to be a big hit among staff, so they're very creative. And our plans for this upcoming year, obviously continue to refining the work we're doing. You know, looking at what's working and how can we make it better. One thing we've already looked at is, you know, how can we go and make our response times better with our ticketing system. So my team has already been working and looking at how can we go and make it so that when staff are filling out help desk tickets, that it's a smoother process for them so that it goes to the right person quicker, so we're not having to redirect them as much. When it comes to cybersecurity, as I said, looking at strengthening student passwords, that's going to be something that's going to be new for our students this year. And then also with our students starting in 6th grade, giving them the opportunity to actually have a little control over their passwords as well when it comes to changing what their password is. So if they want it to be stronger, they can. Expanding that gamification like I talked about when it comes to not only just the cybersecurity stuff, but actually some of the ed tech stuff as well.
And then when it comes to some of the cybersecurity, we're gonna actually go and start looking at some log retention stuff. So kind of taking what we've already done and now trying to add a little bit more to it, just to kind of make sure that things are even more secure with those logs and, you know, having something, using AI to kind of scan those just to make sure that, you know, while we're having everything look at endpoints, let's also have those logs that are sitting there and have it go through, scan those and look for any irregularities as well, just to kind of cover all of our bases. Once again, expanding our work with PD and kind of connecting it with the strategic framework. And the big thing we want to expand on for next year is artificial intelligence with our staff and tying that actually with some student stuff as well. And making sure that it's done in a way that they call it the walled garden approach when it comes to AI, so that it's safe for our students. And then also, this is something we've started working with, or started already, but working with our LMC with digital citizenship and actually trying to expand that so that we can actually reach more of our students at school, but then also when it comes to reaching homes, this is where I'm going to try and make that connection more with families at home, with sending resources through the monthly newsletter, through the district newsletter, for different grade levels, some resources that they can use at home as well, and just really trying to get that digital citizenship message out there.
Okay,
There's a lot of stuff.
that's a lot. Yeah, but really very passionate and excited about the work as well as the progress that we're seeing. I know people who have earned their fishing t-shirts and are proud to wear those. So at this point, we'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
I have a question about indicator one, about the hotspots. One of the observations I've been making as my own kids kind of navigate their school journey is once they get to the middle and high school level, like how dependent their learning is on devices and having internet access both in schooling and at home. And I thought it was interesting, and I don't have any recollection of when we talked about this, but how we worded the indicator, that it's not increasing the number of hotspots we give out, but increasing the availability of it. So I'm wondering if you can speak to what we do to either push those out to people who need it, or identify people who might need it, or advertise that this is something we offer. Because I mean, I know that on the registration process, you have to answer questions that indicate, you know, whether you have reliable internet at home. And I know I've seen it in the newsletter, but if we're reliant too much on internet-based communication to find out about your internet access, we're stuck in a loop.
Yeah. So a couple different ways. And this is why we rely so heavily on, you know, our social workers, and because they really are our ones that are talking with the students, talking with the families, and a lot of times they will actually come to me and email me, and it really is not someone reaching out to me asking for a hotspot like a family. It is, I get a form that is filled out by them, and there was no conversation with the family directly to anyone on my tech team. It's a conversation that they had either with the student or the family, whether it was it could have been a recent change, right, to a situation, or a discovery that was made, and they go and they have access to the form at all times. They went and filled it out, and then that lets my team know, all right, we need to get this filled out. It lets us know the student name, who filled it out. We immediately get, every week I have a calendar thing letting me know, all right, I need to check how many hotspots we have on hand. So I make sure that I always have at least one ready to go. And then Darius goes, he gets it set up, and then whoever put the request in, he goes and gets that right to them, so then they can get that to the family. But then we've also had other ways as well. Most recently, I had a teacher reach out to me about a situation that came to her. And so then I instructed her to reach out to her school social worker, and then gave them, you know, the person's name. Hey, please reach out to them. They will fill out the form. And less than a week later, I got a hotspot request. So it's based on like situations like that. But I get to what you're saying. It's kind of like, if I'm sending an email out asking, do you have internet at home? It's, right? It's sending a boomerang and not expecting it to come back and hit me in the face, right?
And my follow-up question is out of your realm, so it's okay if you don't have an answer, but I'm curious, considering we're kind of reliant rightfully, I think, on the social workers who are kind of having those contacts with families to identify situations, but I'd be curious if that's something that they inquire about in all family, touch points, or if it only comes up because the purpose of the interaction has to do with schoolwork or internet or anything like that, because I think there may be more we can do to identify people who have a need for this that maybe are either off our radar or isn't, falling within our net. But I think this is a really good thing that we do, and I think we should advertise it.
So let me, this is the part where we question everybody, right? Because I've definitely got discussion items for later when we discuss things. My question here is about, I think a lot of this stuff is great, it's wonderful. My question is for all the admin, a lot of this feels operational to me. And my thought is that we maybe didn't give good guidance in this particular results policy as a board. To me, this is an example of one that the board really needs to rethink about, because a results policy would say something more about how are students learning to be healthy in digital environments? How are they learning to use digital tools? The professional development stuff with the teachers, that feels more results oriented to me. The hotspots, I think there are really good questions to be asked there about what our role and responsibilities are in terms of providing access. And some of that might get to a results question or policy. But I'm not sure, particularly, as the report indicates, we're kind of focusing more on our fiber network. That's definitely an operational shift. So at first, I just want to say I love what you're doing with the cybersecurity stuff. There's clearly a place in the operational expectations where we need to maybe ask better questions about that, probably around 7.5 or something like that. But yeah, let me just put it this way. I feel like you're doing such a good job that I want to ask different questions now.
Yeah.
So.
I would agree with John, because there's so much great stuff that's embedded in here, seeing just what the robotics clubs, and it was just how you, reference second grade, I think, turning the colors, now they're hackers. But there's so much growth and there's so much really cool stuff. And I think we've witnessed that really cool stuff. And I think where I keep getting hung up is when the board had a voice in this, we, have indicators that are not focusing on the things that you're doing to advance students' learning, because you are doing so much of that. And so that's what it's great to pull that out. And I think we've bogged you down with indicators that are operational instead of results. So this is, again, I think, highlighting the discussion that we've had as a board, that we need to be making sure that results are really results and operations are really operations. And this is the mixed message that we're giving, to you, but you're still coming back with great student outcomes. You're answering the questions we asked. We just need to refine our questions.
And I think a great example of this is when we sat down and thought of this, tried to think about this, there was no AI. And now you're talking about AI and how the district's adopting it. And that's moving faster than anybody. And so it's really something.
Actually, we should just have AI right there.
If AI could, yeah.
I think to add to that, if we were to refine what we're looking for in regards to the results, I think things that are becoming apparent that we know about, the intersection of mental health and how much we use computers versus, especially after the pandemic, quote unquote, that our social interactions have become so dependent on our use. So I think there's so many different ways that we can think about that and how we're prepping our student body to really think about those pieces, but then also prepping them for the new technologies that are coming that we haven't thought of yet. And so are there ways to look at academies or other ways of prepping students for that next job sector that might be, AI related or YouTube related? I don't know. I'm just thinking.
One of the takeaways from this will be, as we go out and they're talking to people, the key thing that we're hiring our students to go out and do this. I love that, that's how we're integrating, they're so good at this, they're actually employing them to help roll things out. So these are great, great results. And I appreciate so much of what you do is, I mean, it's operational and it's results, and it's like inherently intertwined in some ways. But I really feel like our kids are getting really top-notch access. So, thank you.
Something I was thinking about, right? Because the results policy does state the student experience, right, to safely access. I mean, the verbiage elevates students, which is what we're doing with results. But I do find, I was really sitting with this as you were sharing, right, these things that I realized when we get the chance to actually dialogue and not just read in isolation. There's so much being shared about the staff experience, but I feel with like technology that they're so interconnected because staff are the facilitators of what we need students to know and understand about use of digital media and sources. So it's so interesting to spend that time thinking about staff learning, but I do feel they're so interconnected in this type of realm that's different than others. You know, we hear about PD for the new curriculum for social studies and ELA, but that's kind of more of a sidecar where this is so elevated. You know, digital natives versus maybe not digital natives. And kind of to that point too, I really was drawn to slide 35 where it showed the 6 core topics of digital citizenship, because that's something I think we've talked about is what is the role of the school? Is it to teach how to use the technology? Because I don't always think the kids need our help with that, but it's all of that stuff. And so this is where I was like, wow, these things pulling, you know, making, you know, whatever it is that you all are seeing from a curricular standpoint and the lived experience of students is with some of these things, I'm excited about that aspect as well, that we're hearing pieces of and how can that become more of this results piece. Again, like where does the information sort of land and share? Because it's so fabulous to hear. And that I'm really excited about.
Pulling off of that, I think there's just that informational on that same slide about asking students who have they, you know, who have you talked to about being safe online? And we're seeing
Teachers
are our number one resource. I love, that's like a great piece of information for us to have. I mean, that's, I mean, also if they ask like parents, sometimes we have no idea, but I love that, like, that's a great,
I'm glad you're keeping, can I go?
Yeah, please.
I'm glad that we're keeping kids safe, cybersecurity, awesome, you know, teaching everybody how to responsibly use, or not fall for phishing, all that's very important. But to Jen's point, I really thought that what I feel like I hear a lot of people being concerned about is how becoming a digital citizen or being a good digital citizen impacts the classroom. So we're talking about like the use of technology, how it's impacting your mental health, the levels of distraction that iPad versus Chromebook might be causing a different, you know, K to 5, middle school, high school, how that's impacting learning potentially. How can we show the story to parents that we're actually helping teach their kids how to become critical thinkers and creators, in the sense of determining what is valid and good information that I find on the internet and that's trustworthy versus not. I feel like I'm hearing a lot of that, the community's concerns. So it would be helpful, I think it's more board related. How can we show results to answer that call from parents? Are kids distracted and paying attention? Are they really learning how to use this safely to be well-informed citizens that's going to serve them well outside of school?
I think we're, Jason and the team's next steps that we named slide 45, just working with our library media specialists to think through what are the specialized lessons to actually teach those digital citizenship standards and get back to some of those core practices that you called out that were on the slide. So I think as we do that, we certainly would have additional student performance data, so to speak, around those standards and their mastery of those standards that we could bring back if that was a shift in indicators that was made.
And that, like, I think becomes the mirroring of the process, right? That we kind of talk about the data, the things we're interested in seeing, and then if you all as a team feel like an indicator needs to shift, right? Those indicators are yours for us to just, right, to give that nod to. But I think we've talked about this, like, when do you all change indicators if you feel like that's necessary? This always feels like an interesting time when we're having this dialogue, you know, with your team, whenever, you know, I feel like that can be a fluid process of having those conversations to reflect back on indicators that maybe elevate or readjust based on kind of these table conversations.
Yeah, I think we've been having that conversation just as a board, like what do we do with our policies? And this, I think, is if we are shifting policies, then indicators would follow. But with the indicators that we have, I feel like we've gotten such great information that helps us see what indicators we would also want to like, continue to capture. Because there's a lot of really great work. I don't know, I think we just have a policy process that the board has to.
I don't think people realize how important those hotspots are. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, at the start of the pandemic, like it's ended, it hasn't. But at the start of it, I can remember, and Dr. Clarity remembers, I'm sure, us at another organization just applying those hotspots so kids could have the ability to participate in asynchronous learning. And just having the ability to have the districts apply families with those hotspots. I don't think that's being recognized or applauded enough because some of those families just simply do not have the means to even have the internet and people take it for granted. So I really wanted to applaud that because I remember just a few years ago, scrambling with community-based organizations trying to figure that out. Like how do we get families, how do we supply them with the infrastructure to be able to participate when their kids couldn't physically be in the building?
Yeah, that's a great, I think that's such a huge piece, but I would bet in operations, and that's where the board, I think, has our work cut out for us to make sure that we've got everything in alignment, before we start asking you to sort and shift.
And that's it's always a tough thing too with like creating this too, because it's, there's so many amazing things that our teachers are doing with technology that like, when I'm creating like this presentation, I have to be really general, right? I talk about robotics, but then, you go downstairs down the hall and you see the amazing things that they're doing on the first floor. But then, 2 weeks ago, I got invited, I'll shout her out, Amy Otis invited me to her classroom. They were doing some really cool DNA stuff with strawberries, and they were using the Chromebooks with microscopes with a seesaw lesson. And I mean, the fact that they're using technology in this way with students and fifth graders, and like, I was like, when I was in fifth grade, and I only know this because I uncovered Sugar Creek's technology plan from 1993 to 1994. And I was in fourth grade at the time, and I looked at their fifth grade standards. So it was probably about what I was doing in fifth grade at that time. And it said I create a city in Sim City and make it, it was like things like that. It was like, oh my God, the fact that they are analyzing DNA, in a 45-minute class session. The whole thing, and she has a class of 20-some kids doing that. It's just amazing. And but that's one person. There's people all over the district doing that on a daily basis, and be able to do that presentation is I can't. There's just so many things.
Coming from the Oregon Trail.
Right.
Right. Some cities.
Just trying not to die dysentery.
Exactly. Yeah. Can I just offer a tangential yet somewhat related comment of the end of the year visits and getting into classrooms? I happened to land in a classroom at Savannah Oaks where students were doing research, and I asked, how do you know if you're just doing a Google search, what's reputable? And the student knew immediately how to clarify that as just an example of this. So just as a reminder to the board, the power of being able to have those opportunities where we get to go into classrooms, and maybe even a shout out to staff members. Occasionally we get invites to the VSD board to come and see cool things happening in classrooms. I'm all in as many things as I can try to attend. So yeah, to be able to get out and see for ourselves, I think also helps the dialogue at this table, which we'll talk about again later, but yeah.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions for the team before we kind of draw this into more official than board voting? Okay, get my language. So we have received and discussed the superintendent's monitoring report for results policy R 2.3 technologically fluent. I'll now accept a motion to accept and approve the report as presented, so we can just follow through with our vote. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Christopher. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Corby. Any further discussion then as board members in terms of the recommendation that this be deemed achieving reasonable progress? Okay. We have a motion from Christopher and a second from Corby signify just that. All those in favor of approving R2.3 as achieving reasonable progress signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to OE8, communicating with and support of the board. Continuing through our slides, and here we go, clicker back in hand.
Okay, before we transition, I want to take an opportunity. If you haven't got a chance, I think we all have had a chance, but when we acknowledge the work of individual team members, the technology department sometimes doesn't get recognized enough in the work that they've done under Jason's leadership and his ability to bring the team together to help with professional development. Jason is a teacher at heart, so we try to hire teaching staff in the first, but it's moving to the technology world, but he keeps that base of educating and being an educator. So just want to give Jason a shout out to him and his team for continuing up and going. I think if you've lost your phone for more than an hour, you know how long, what technology means to all of us, because we feel lost, and he's doing this for about 1,000 staff members, and there are about 6,000 scholars on the daily basis. So thank you to Jason and his team for everything that they do. I want to move to OE8, and often on nights when we have both a results policy and an operational expectations policy, I want to reframe the board into the space, and much of what John and Meredith talked about, there is a really distinction between the two styles. In terms of our operations, they are really in the compliance world of did the action take place at the request or per policy of the Board of Education, and it's not really followed with a true metric of how it impacted students, as it's not a results-based policy. So we just have to look at it from a different mindset. OE8 is one of our more dense ones with 14 different sections. So for the sake of that, I know the board has had time to look at and review all the areas, but I just wanted to highlight some of the areas and then turn it over to the board for deeper discussion. I'll begin by reframing that what I identify as really those key core attributes of OE8, which is having the board have information in a timely manner, especially when it comes to media coverage, or which actually is a tougher area to determine is when the media will or will not decide to run coverage. So we just try to put as much out there in the event that that media coverage does exist. If there is non-compliance in terms of any of our policies, we do that through our monitoring reports, and we make sure that communication is concise and simple in that area. If there's a need for a action during a board meeting, working with board leadership to ensure that those are on the agenda. Board business in terms of not just spaces, but the messaging from district administration and the board, and sometimes when those happen, they coincide or are on the same document. And then keeping the boards, the official posting of meetings, and make sure that we are that board members have access to information equally. Because there were some adjustments to OE8 recently, I thought it'd be best to put some of the 2024 leadership moves that directly coincided with those adjustments to policy, and then move into the 2025 leadership moves. So just as a reminder in memory lane, that in 2024, some of the things that we adjusted were shifting to give the board members more insight into each school's instructional practices, and added that as part of some of the results policy. The administrative team began the recap of board education regular meetings, and that allowed our staff, who have shown a lot of appreciation for those recaps, to come to life. We know it's a pretty intense process to have those out, and also having our president review those recaps before they go to the public as part of the process. And then the third addition was the writing of the opposite week to make sure that the board had additional information, the end of the week emails that keep the board informed when we don't have board meetings that week on those opposite weeks. The 2025 moves are predominantly on the technical side, but again, we're added, and I definitely want to give a shout out to Lori for assisting in this work to have more access to cumulative folders so the board could easily find documents in a timely fashion, and have those located in a library that she brought together in folders, and then built a library. Those three areas for 2024 or 25 were the recaps are there. So instead of having to go through your emails, all the board recaps are in board docs in the library under board meeting recaps. So not just board members, but any community member can go and find those. The Human Growth and Development Committee committee minutes are there in board docs in their own personal library for the board. The end of the week emails that I just mentioned are also part of that new technology new process of putting them in the library for board members to access. And then most recently, I'm working with board leadership to make on those joint messaging. We've added the new signature line, which shows cohesion between the board and district administration when we have that signage line with President Murphy and myself, also with the photo. So
For the photo.
that goes along with it. All right, so as we move into the policy itself, just a reminder that the two most recent policy adjustments that occurred last year were that the increase that the superintendent ensure that the board is appropriately included and effectively represented in district communication was newer, and that the superintendent will ensure that the board has necessary staff and administrative support to successfully meet its government commitments, specifically adding the board's ability to add perspective into the evaluation of the executive assistant, which was added as an indicator as well. More towards the end of the presentation, after you've had time to just provide feedback on the areas itself, I did write beyond the leadership move I don't know if it's a recommendation, but a consideration, I would say, not really in the form of a recommendation of some knowledge that we gained at the April 30th meeting in terms of the some of the things that we have been grappling with as a team as well around OE8, and how some of the districts that are using the same governance policy have moved either all or some of the components of OE8 over to the BSRs, which stand for Board Superintendent Relationship, knowing that there are significant components of OE8 that are specific to how the board and superintendent directly engage with each other. I don't know that it would be appropriate to move all 14 sections there, because some of it relates to representation with the community, which I think stays in OE8, but then again, just up to the board to make considerations as you don't own the policies as to, is it best positioned in OE8 or is it best positioned in board superintendent relationships for later dialogue. I don't think the board is going to want me to sit here and go through all 14 as you've had all the information to go over on the monitoring report itself, as well as the presentation. So my suggestion, I would like to turn it over to the board to ask me questions about any of the 14 areas or any of the indicators, and I can provide any insight, whether it's the indicator itself or the evidence that went along with the indicator. So I'll turn it over to the board this time, and using the documents in front of you to support our conversation.
Thank you. So board members, as we have had this report, time to process any initial questions, comments, considerations about OE8 that we want to elevate.
Overall, I really appreciate the board recaps and finding things in the folders. I know that's been a big lift for supporting the board for the new indicators. And I think that's been really a helpful thing, and I know I appreciate it. I think it's out there.
And thank you again to Lori for that.
Mm-hmm. Marcy,
Yeah,
yeah,
Marcy.
yeah, thanks to both of you. Mhm. Hugely helpful.
Oh, and I also wanted to note that the items that are in Board Docs for board members, you need to be signed in in order to see them.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Right, because some of that is, right, our content.
Yes.
Thank you. Yep. And to clarify for the community. Thanks, Lori. I mean, I have one sort of general kind of wondering, and it's a little bit maybe more for the board. I mean, I feel like with some of these things, we've kind of established some working procedures without actual dialogue around working procedures. So I think one of them that comes to mind, I think it might be, I forget which OE sub thing it lands to. Well, maybe I guess it's 8.5. So anytime the phrasing in the indicator says the board will be given information or share of information, I think there are times where I get the information just from quickness of if it's a quick call for you or a quick text from you, and then I become the layer disseminator to the rest of you. It's just sort of started to be that way, and I guess I just even want to ask the board. The policy says the board gets information. We have the weekly emails, we have those, but in those kind of quicker moments, if there's, how that feels to all of you. We've just kind of landed in this procedure and we haven't talked about it, so.
That's a good question. I think, first of all, in a pinch, yes, there's times, but that shouldn't be your job. And that's, I think, where, when we're talking about, the board is giving all of this information, I don't think that that's necessarily, I know having said, in the leadership meetings, there is a difference of information. And so I think that's something that we kind of raised in some other contexts that I feel pretty strongly we need to address again. And maybe that's a BSR, policy. Yeah.
Because that's where I feel like, to the BSR point, I feel like some of this, it isn't your decision necessarily, but how an OE8 comes into practice, right? There is a little bit of this collaboration. So when it feels like we're trying to hold you accountable into a relational piece, that also just feels complex, that it feels like it's more of a space for a dialogue about what do we want procedures to look like because of the relationship between the board and the superintendent. So that is, I think that becomes like the sticky widget of something like this OE8 with something like this, that then in turn we're supposed to evaluate you on something that we didn't actually kind of collectively even talk about to begin with, even though it feels like a team space. Did I say that way? That kind of, just to bring up the piece that you've talked about maybe there's a revisiting to aspects of this from a cultural and an evaluative kind of aspect.
I also think that, it's funny you went to OE5, which was kind of the driver of a lot of it. The quickness of needing to get information to a board member is often hinges on me not knowing if the media is going to pick it up or not, or how fast it'll get on social media, or how fast something, and just trying to get a message out there. I think to Meredith's point, if you were to look at totality of communication, I just did it because I thought this part of the conversation might come up. In terms of a text of information to the board president, I was in the multi-hundreds of just quick heads up here, or here's something that's going on. And I think where I would like to know, and I think is where you're going to question, like how are we parsing out? Well, because it didn't go to the media, does it still have to go to the rest of the board?
Yeah,
or
any heads up, right.
all those things.
Multi-hundreds to zero,
Yeah.
we're not hitting an indicator.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing nothing and you're getting multiple hundreds of hits, we don't have the same information.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I would agree with that. Because there's also the information, if we are looking at it, then it's a determination of just because it didn't go in the form of a text in that moment, because I'm not going to create a quorum by sending a full board text, doesn't mean it didn't also go into either the board updates on the following week, which a multitude of that information does go into the spaces. I think there has to be kind of a willingness to engage in that, read all the information that's put in there, and look at it in totality, and then after you've read everything, if we feel like there's information missing, then I think that's a bigger conversation.
Yeah, I'm pretty good about that. I think what we probably do need to figure out though is where the BSR follows, because I think Joe's, brought up, sometimes does it feel like we're getting the kind of the gist of it? And I think that's what the board is really ultimately, capturing. And if these are the indicators, then that's where I think the BSR might be catching some of this, where what's the standard of operations? Because if it doesn't feel like it's working, then we need to reevaluate.
And that was something I had written a note to myself quite a number of weeks ago to even kind of consult with Nate a bit of like the difference between, and some of this relies on us to know when to reply and not to reply, but right, of you sending a mass text to the whole board, hey, FYI, versus it comes to me and then I mass text all of you and say, don't reply. That it feels like if we have the parameters for board to know, this is one way at this moment. These are these one-way texts that you all get from me, that could we have that same process from you, that rather than just going to me, that it just goes to all 7 and we're not engaging with it. It's simply informational. And that was kind of a piece like quorum-wise, we're kind of engaging in that a bit. And then does that feel better if it's direct and not, from me? So that was just one sort of question and or wondering about just a simple process.
So I think this could go on for a long time. I think that I'm fine with the OE8 report right here. But I do think that, as one of our slides brings up, it is appropriate to have a discussion, even like a whole board discussion, about how much of OE8 should actually be in BSR 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then how it might be articulated differently as more like of this sort of stuff is spelled out appropriately in that space. It wouldn't be appropriate in an OE to spell out all of these like procedures around how you're going to communicate with the board. Is this like a tier 1 emergency or a tier 2 emergency? But in the BSR stuff, we can probably spell that out more appropriately. I don't think any of us want to get texts into the hundreds. But I think that the fallacy that's being committed there is that it's about urgency, right? Like if you had 10 texts in a week, they're probably about 1 or 2 matters that then get reported out in the email, the leadership email at the end of the week, 99% of the time, right? So, it's about getting multiple messages, and it's about like how urgent is this stuff, and we can spell all that out in BSR 5, and I think it's appropriate for us to do that. So in the interest of, the OE, I'm fine with it. I feel like I'm getting to broken record status about like, this is a clear example of how we need to rewrite something. But I think the 2 tonight to me have kind of been that way.
The other one I would say is 8.4. I think that was another one that the board last time kind of touched on about when we're talking about internal and external viewpoints. Do we want to be hearing them or do we want to be hearing about them from, Dr. Clarity? Because that just feels like then we're still getting a filtered. And I think Jen, John and I talked about that with 8.4.
Yeah, indicator 1.
That ties in a little bit to a thought I was having as we were hearing about the Student Advisory Committee today, and how great a thing that is to have, and how nice it would be for us to have a Student Advisory Committee. And then that made me think, didn't we talk a couple of years ago about the idea of having like a student representative on the board, like they could fill that role? So I was just running through that, made me think of it with Meredith.
Yeah, it sounds like that's, I think it would be really interesting to be hearing directly from the source as opposed to distillations and thoughts.
Or even just summaries. Like, it's so much better to hear it straight from the source rather than get a summary of what they're saying.
Right.
I felt the same way, had the same thought. But the other part of that though is, and this is a little bit tangential, is what other groups are we sitting on, and maybe there's a way for us to communicate that back. So I give an example of GSA, for example. I go to that meeting I should report that back to this board, that we're, sharing that information. Or other things that make sense, sure.
Yeah, and that is kind of what not to
Yeah.
say that it can't look different, but
Yeah.
just general board updates,
Yep.
yes. Yeah, to have anyone elevate those things is great. So, John, I appreciate the kind of redirect. So coming back to OE8 currently as presented, knowing some of the notes I'm taking about workshop time, future, to do some revisiting. And I think these become one of those moments, thank you, Dr. Cleary, for giving some attempts at kind of some language and that kind of initial crosswalk that you shared in this report, where this could be another kind of worker bee group to maybe do some attempts at some of this with, I feel like sometimes it's nice to have something to start from. But where we take the conversation next about where the concerns are and what that might start to look like in a BSR.
Well, first we need to get, I feel like we have to get results. Yeah, this is.
Where priorities are in terms of time.
And
Yeah.
then,
Well, we're gonna have 16 hours of retreat this summer, right? We are gonna do, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Don't leave until the work is done. Okay, so with all of that said, coming back to this report as is, any additional questions, at least at this moment, before we bring the report officially into our purview for a vote?
I had a quick query. To Meredith's point about getting information, I guess, do we have a framework as to, because it's not like I want to know everything that you guys talk about in the executive meetings, right? Do we have a framework of what should be, I guess, I don't know, just some guidelines of what should be communicated with the broader board versus more items that don't need to be?
or even like agendas.
Does anybody care
That could be a good way
to
to
have something like that?
share the agenda
Because
out.
my concern is I don't want to be, I know I don't need to know everything, and I don't want to, but I certainly want to make sure I'm not missing anything that's really important for me to know that might help form an opinion or discussion point that I want to bring up at a board meeting or at a side discussion or one-on-one with Dr. Clarity. Or I don't know what I don't know yet to address the community, so it would make me feel more comfortable if we had some kind of communication guideline. And if it falls within this jurisdiction, we will let you know. If it falls within this jurisdiction, on a need-to-know basis, executive team will handle it. That would be really helpful for me to have that type of transparency to make sure I'm not missing it.
I think that is, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's where it's hard to know.
And if it's not much, that's great, and I'm not missing
You
it.
don't know.
If there is, sometimes I feel like maybe it could be a little more informed.
Yeah.
In plethora of information we have, there are some cases where I feel like there's still some things where I wish I was a little better informed. But this is a process, right, to continuously improve upon the amazing things we're doing. How else can we make sure we're all equipped with the right information? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to write frantically just to hold some of this, because, right, it's unanswerable, some of it, and so I think capturing some of this. Okay. All right, well, we've been presented with the monitoring report for OE8. I'll accept a motion to accept the presentation as shared, so we can begin more discussion in terms of compliance.
So moved.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Any additional sentiments then about the presentation as being offered as in compliance?
I'm just struggling. I know there's been a couple things where we come up where the board hasn't had all the same information, or there's been some misunderstandings, and I'm struggling with that one. I think that was kind of something that I'd like to circle back to, with BSR, we don't need to maybe go through it here, but I think there's a lot of great work that is being done with the nuts and bolts of it, but I think we're missing a little bit.
And I think my piece is, if you look at the indicators, they feel compliant. The policy verbiage at some of the right, the way that 8.8 may be written, comparing that to an indicator as being in compliant, the grayness kind of from that jump is where I'm, right? So I feel the compliance piece indicator wise as presented. But I think what we're seeing is within the language of any one sub-policy piece where where the indicator kind of has that gap of things that we're servicing. Am I saying that in a way that makes sense?
Yeah, I think what you're, again, it's coming back to the PSRs.
Right, yeah, so I do think, and just as a side note, when we were at that conference and that was shared as, OE8's being a BSR, I mean, I could not have been more struck with awe and dumbfounded by duh. So just to elevate that, I mean, it was just like, yeah, wow. So anyway, it feels like with this conversation, that feels elevated even more. We have a motion on the table from Joe and a second from John. Any further comments before we take our vote? All those in favor of approving the OE8 monitoring report as being in compliance signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I'm gonna have to vote no. I don't feel like we are with all in the same for 8.8.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to general board updates. Christopher, do you have any? Oh, just with what you shared, okay. Any other updates, board members, what have you been up to? Like I said, we're gonna talk more about the impact and the kind of takeaways of the site visits, but do just kind of look back, make sure you know which ones you're signed up for. Now that kind of the signups are done, I know Lori, I think, has sent calendar invites, but just kind of keep track of your calendars, please, to continue to follow through on those. They are amazing.
Could we agenda, maybe after these, kind of reflect on how we want to do them moving forward? Because I
Oh, the
know,
end of year visits?
yeah, I know I'm
yeah.
gonna miss all of them this year. And I'd love to figure out a way, it's 2 days off in 1 month,
Yeah,
and none of them.
and we've kind of talked about that, which is all of us having
Yeah.
jobs outside of board. How does that play
So I
out?
think last year I got to hit 1, and this year I'm out for all of them.
So when we debrief just those in general, we'll add that piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we make sure that we have that though, like specific time to talk about
Yeah.
what the board wants to see?
Yeah.
I think that would really be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Any other general OE8 for board updates? Sorry, I'm taking my note. Okay, stop writing, Jen, continue to facilitate. All right. Okay, then moving on to superintendent consent agenda. Just to elevate within the consent agenda, we do have a personnel item. So there has been a new hire in the district, which we did see over email. Dr. Clarity, if you, you do have an updated slide. I know, I guess I didn't refresh. Yeah, we did have a lot of them.
Great.
Yeah,
All right.
let's
Well,
bring some voice.
really hope Erin is still with us, listening, and she's really excited to be able to join the Verona School District. So we're excited, and I think did the board approve the agenda so we can say it's official?
We approved the agenda.
I mean, approve the consent.
Oh, we did not technically approve consent. Any further discussion or questions?
So I can't
Or
say-
that the superintendent's consent agenda is approved as presented, and
All right, now I can
now we
officially.
can officially say.
Erin,
It's been approved.
it's really an honor to bring Erin Davenport into the Verona School District family. She brings multiple years' experience into not just only our special education and special education department, but she's got a multifaceted expertise in areas, but really her expertise in special education and special education programming rose to the top in the application process. Just wanted to give an overview to our community and to the board around our very thorough process to get highly qualified candidates. Obviously, we opened it up with, I think we had in the 30s for candidates for this position. We opened it up with screening with the combination of HR as well as leadership team members to really narrow the pool down from the bigger number to candidates that we want to bring in for potential interviews. Following the selection, Erin rose to one of the finalists in those areas. We did a dual panel one panel of approximately 12 members of administrators from various departments across the Verona School District. We also did a panel of our staff, SEAs, case managers, other areas, special education, other areas of special education, assistant directors, and that was facilitated by Teresa Taylor. So thank you so much for guiding that process as well. After those two very thorough panels, Aaron again rose to the top and did a final interview with myself and Amy Englikens, and then really extensive reference checks and accepted on her end of it the position on Friday, and then waiting for board action today. So what this means for our families and what this means for our students and our staff to know that we'll continue to grow in special education programming, but what it means for our whole system is even bigger, because we know we can't have special education as isolated or live in the silos at all, and it has to be part of our programming. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Hallberg for her years of service to the Verona School District, and hopefully she enjoys a very well-deserved retirement after multiple years of service in multiple districts, but most recently here in the Verona School District. And these two will work hand in hand to be able to have a smooth transition as we shift from one leadership to the other. So again, congratulations to Aaron, and thank you to our board for approving the final step in this process.
Yeah, thank you. Exciting process, thorough as always for bringing on new leadership. So thank you to you and your team. And welcome, Aaron. We look forward to having you in the back potentially. It's a great space to be at 8:15 on a Monday night. All right, and taking a look then at board consent agenda. Any questions? Hearing none, board consent agenda is approved. Future dates are here, and I'm guessing shortly we're going to start to get firm commitments on graduation in terms of board attendance. So Laura, you and I can work on that as we need to kind of definitively decide and plan on who will be able to attend. Hopefully all of us will be very exciting. I know it is on a Sunday this year. So watch for that, and then upcoming board meetings. So we're going to take some time to shift just to a quick board debrief around the checklist process, which I'm guessing is why this amazing group of back people are still here to hear our profound sentiments about the reporting checklist. So just opening it up to some general discussion feedback, partially just for the team. You know, this was a first run for the team to kind of take this reworking, John, that you elevated. And again, appreciation to you for putting something like this together to help the admin team give us information that we've been declaring and desiring as a board. And then for us to kind of use this as a place to see, are we getting the things that we need, and being able to find a place to elevate any questions. Any thoughts?
I can get us started. I thought I thought the format was an improvement. I think one area that I liked probably most about the checklist that John had put together, that I still think we can kind of build out a little more, is the concept of an executive summary. That, like, in theory, I think an executive summary would be like a 1 page or less. If I'm so short on time, I can't read the entire report, I could read that 1 page and get the gist of the rest of the report just from reading that. And I don't feel like I got that this time around. But that could also be a difference in my own expectation. Otherwise, I thought it looked really good.
This is where I thought the report was great. I thought the board's indicators made it harder. So I really loved getting like the narrative version of what the students were doing. And that was really helpful. I love hearing like the specifics about the kids, even though that didn't fit into the indicators that we have out there, but hearing the anecdotes, those are the things that I'll remember and can then share out. And I think that's super valuable.
And that we have that kind of place, right, for qualitative, quantitative spelled out here, yeah. And, I think we talked about this beforehand, that this doesn't necessarily apply to every results report. So, right, there were things here I even kind of wrote to myself of not really applicable for this report. And I think that's just it's why it's a tool, really, not a checklist. Remember, we use that verbiage in mentoring a lot. It's a tool. It's not a compliant or non-compliant checklist. We just use this to kind of help frame ourselves. So that, I think it's a very dynamic document. I wouldn't want us to see it have to change to accommodate for that, just using our own kind of purview to know this particular thing isn't really relevant for this report, or maybe this one is.
I like this, it's nice to have.
Yeah,
Um,
and just kind of a peek when we were talking through this, having this like blank for me to use on my own, right? I think the team used it to like check for themselves, but to have this be organically for me to use blank to kind of really see how that I felt was important.
Like you said, I don't think like there's like compare peer districts. Not
Yeah,
relevant,
not doing that.
you know,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So, like not square peg round hole type
Right.
thing. I'm glad we're not like being like dogmatic about it. Like,
I did NA that, yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
that's where I'm glad that just because we wrote it doesn't mean you have to figure out how to do it, that
Mhm.
relevant, but.
Mhm.
And I think different results are gonna lend themselves to
Mhm.
different pieces of this. So I hope that no one's really pretzeling themselves to
Yeah.
make this work.
I like this though, because I feel it'll make it easier for us to have conversations, especially around, I know John's brought this up a lot in the past, and Christopher, around tying things that we're doing to the strategic framework, to the equity framework, to make sure it all connects. And I just think having this in front of us to remind us to be thinking that way will spur, hopefully, conversations like we've been having lately.
One piece to that I would relate is one of the most important pieces of the equity framework is identifying barriers where they exist. And without either lived experience or someone to bring that to the table, our understanding of that broadly only comes out through discussion. I think the more that we can understand without having to have like expertise in understanding those barriers, there needs to be a way to identify and have those discussions that we're broadly, if I don't show up to a meeting, I can't bring that lens with me, so that lens can still be brought into the work that we're doing and what we're considering. So that's one thing that I'm not sure how that fits in here, and this one spot here under leadership moves and future planning, how do we pepper that throughout, that we're having that consideration, and it's not an afterthought, but a forethought, and we all have that tool to the ready. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
It's kind of a lens to look through our whole conversation.
It should have required with experience, rather that we can bring that, we have broad enough experience and understanding of that equity framework, and we're living that every day in our actions and bring it to the table.
Thank you.
Just a
I'm
thought.
taking notes again.
Under like the leadership moves for future planning, which I hope that barriers identified, solutions.
Yeah, we're understanding and mitigating any disparate potential. But that, oftentimes we rely on that expertise of that firsthand experience versus, so it should be just something that's part of our ongoing.
I remember when we got coffee,
Mhm.
and we talked about the rules of engagement that
I think it's good that
you
this.
brought up that. So maybe that's something we can talk about is, these are a set of things that we kind of always bring to mind as we enter every meeting. We had a list of things. Remember that when we had the coffee, we had a list of things that would be great to think about, keep top of mind the entire meeting.
Mhm.
It's centered around keeping that equity framework front and center with everything that we're talking about. It's centered around even just respect for each other when we're talking and listening to each other's different opinions.
Mhm.
Maybe that's something we can bring into the next workshop, wherever it's
Right,
appropriate.
we kind of talked about that, about working
To tie in
agreements
this
just as we,
checklist.
yeah.
Yeah, tie in this checklist, maybe that would be helpful.
Or if that's ways that we govern ourselves, right, with our,
Really appreciate that you put this together, John.
yes.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Oh my gosh.
Great work.
Worker bee extraordinaire, you get worker bee award of the board right now.
Did you use AI? Did you use AI?
No,
This is his jam.
no, but I didn't do this per se. This was the admin team generated this off of the document that I shared out with everybody, so I can't vouch for that. But, in hindsight, there are pieces of it that I probably should have, because as Dr. Cuddy can tell you, I get a little bit, hard to understand sometimes.
And I don't know, Jason or Amy, because this was kind of the first report you two were in kind of the crux of it, do you two want to offer any just thoughts that you had about, I know, right, you just kind of described the organic nature with which this came to be from your perspective as well, but any thoughts you want us to consider as we've been debriefing?
I think it was helpful for us in thinking through a well-rounded data sources, right? Because as you saw, the indicators were pretty limited. We're just looking at number of hotspots, do people, this one survey question, and do we have a plan? Sure, right? And we could easily check those boxes pretty clearly. I think the checklist helped us think about what is that qualitative data, what is the story that we're telling in that way? So I found it useful in that way.
It helped us load too, and I think using that to then kind of revamp the template of the summary too. It made this a lot cleaner for somebody being able to just not have a bunch of words on a page, just that having everything in nice table format, everything. It just made it easier to follow too, I feel like.
I think it also helps our team think that it's not just, Jason has a different style than Rosa Maria has. And so our approach to executive summaries has been slightly different based on what people have highlighted. I think providing a checklist and a different format for the monitoring report helps us to think through some of the same consistent lenses, and actually can help us think through. We know that we've got all these pieces covered, so then how do we go deeper, as you're naming, thinking about what are the barriers and how are we dismantling those as we go, instead of just, did I include the right survey data? Right? And think more holistically about that. So appreciation for your time.
Thank you. Yes, we'll just say then onward to the next one and just, yeah, exactly, continually reflect.
Lori, it was really helpful having this printed out just for the first few times. That could be something like the next, until we kind of get familiar with it.
And maybe it can be a thing that lives in board docs than just ongoing, right? Anytime we have something to monitor, because then we have that access always in an easy place.
I like keeping it flexible because we might change it over the next few. I think for me, one of the key questions as we do this back and forth is, like, does this sort of thing make your job easier or harder? And that's where we kind of have to set niceties aside and, honestly, like, if this is just another, thing that you have to work through the check boxes and it's not working to like streamline any bit of work, then I don't know how valuable it is. I mean, it's valuable for us, obviously, but like we have to balance that with any costs and time, so.
Yeah, I think what will be perhaps the next step for us is to figure out which of these items that we struggled slightly with is, do we want to meet all these check boxes in the presentation alone, all these check boxes in the monitoring report, or some in each? Because certain things feel redundant or not. So I think that's something for us to tease out as we also just think about length of presentations.
Which maybe kind of to your point, Joe, of like the presentation could be sort of the one pager and we have all the access to the data. And right, if that's then our role as board members to shoot into some of that, to be able to bring questions, but for, I don't know.
Can we get clarification? Because that was going to be my follow-up question to Joe, as brought up again, because that's opposite of the way we did it. And if that's going to be an expectation, then we just need to shift our mindset.
Or for something to try. Yeah, I don't know if I'm saying it as an expectation or a.
You did everything in the presentation.
Yeah, not much in the executive summary on purpose. Because it was, we felt like we were saying the same thing twice. And so it was like a very minimal executive summary because everything was in the presentation. Right. If we want to go more executive summary and then not as much presentation, that's the direction we want to go.
I'm happy to have everyone tell me they disagree with me if they do, but to me, the value of an executive summary is that it takes the important elements from the rest of the report. So by definition, it is repetitive. But like, not that I'm suggesting we ever would not read the entire report, but in theory, if someone read only the executive summary, they would get the gist of the report.
for a community member if that was the
Right.
piece that they gravitated toward.
But other people might have a far different expectation for what they want out of these reports, so I don't want to dictate what it should be.
I think when I think about this is not going to be helpful at all. I think that there is, a report that is laid out according to this sheet that includes an executive summary, like Joe said, that probably would benefit from some AI, if I was writing it at least. This data analysis presentation, I think the way I would look at it is like the presentation part probably has a lot to do with the executive summary and the leadership moves, but maybe not all of the details of the data analysis, particularly when we get into those OEs that have like so much stuff. I would say,
Jads.
you're writing a report that covers all these check boxes. The presentation then would cover, a good executive summary and then the leadership moves. If I'm a parent watching at home, those are the things I really want to see. And then, I can come and dig into the data if I need to. But
I think it's also important to remember what we use these reports for, because at the end of the year, when we go back and kind of try to summarize, as part of the superintendent evaluation, we're not pulling up the presentations and looking at the presentations again, but we might be pulling up the reports. We're not going to read a 15-page report for each results policy and operational expectation, but we might read the executive summary for each as we're trying to kind of think through what the evaluation looks like.
Yeah. A well-synthesized paragraph.
Yeah, and it really does just have to be a paragraph. I like John's idea about AI, but
That's where the AI goes.
So, yeah, that's where it shines.
Yeah.
The piece I always kind of remain over as well that we've talked about just in terms of how board meetings function is the discourse and the discussion and the conversation. So to have you all give another 45-minute presentation on information that we have, where is that sweet spot where the majority of the time is the discussion and the questions and the digging in, that's the part I think is also really valuable as board members and why we are here, and to have that, for the sake of the community, to be able to dialogue around what we are seeing in the report rather than being presented to. So however that's just my personal sentiment about kind of the play within the board space.
And I'll say, people might be different, but for me, I don't even look at the presentations on the results policy of the OEs because I read the report. So I don't even look at the slides. I see them at the board meeting, but ahead of time, I don't read those.
Did that give you any guidance? Did we give any guidance? I know, right? Did we say 75 things and actually say nothing? Okay.
I think we got it. If we had AI synthesize that discussion, it would probably be pretty useful.
Oh, like Zoom will do? Oh, yeah. I won't even say what my husband would be saying right now about me and facilitating. So, okay. Great. Then let's please adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C to consider the compensation of a public employee over which the board has jurisdiction, specifically to consider the superintendent annual step compensation. We will shift to closed session by roll call vote. In favor, signify with aye. Joe?
Aye.
Corby?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Meredith? Christopher?
Aye.
Juan Carlos?
Aye.
I am aye as well. We are off to closed session. Thanks all.